homeless.
Until I see you. A glimpse of your good outshines the best that I could be. I am but dark to your brightness, but Lord, in your likeness, let there be light in me. 'Cause when I see you, contrasting hues, I see my stand of imperfections that make me in
So you come back, so you like right after May.
Yes. I thought you said homelessness.
Holy are you,
Oh. Oh.
holy are
Remember,
So we on the
Lord.
same page. I got you. Well, you know, when
and I
you're
was
good at
looking,
everything,
and I was
you don't
looking from
have
this
to.
side, and
Uh-huh.
your name tripped on this side.
A portrait of you.
Let me try to call him.
I don't really like this feeling of running away
So
from
Unica will go.
getting a taste of that
Okay.
poison. My mouth is numb from every sip.
So Anna's gonna go.
Forgotten what it's like to feel. Been running along with the wind. Whoa. Could you please just pull me back again? I don't really like this feeling. We're running away from everything. Keep getting a taste of that poison. My mouth is numb from every sip. Forgotten what it's like to feel. Been running along with the wind. Ooh. Could you please, please, could you please, could you please just pull me back again?
I got 3 different ones. It's okay.
I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love to me. 'Cause on the cruel cross he suffered from the curse to set me free. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. And made me free.
I will tell the wondrous story how
triumph and power I'll tell. The victory he giveth over sin and death and hell. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. Now I am free. I will sing of my Redeemer and his heavenly love to me. From death to life hath brought me, O Son of God, with victory. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. Made me free. You made me free.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to St. James Presbyterian Church. Welcome to our Housing and Neighborhood Development Meeting. I am Reverend Dr. Fanta Lanston, the pastor here, and I am so happy to see all of you. I invite you to help me to welcome the person to your right or to your left. Just turn to your neighbor and say, I'm glad you're here. If you're online, type in the chat, I am glad you are here. Beloved, there is an African proverb, and many of us have probably heard it before. It says, it takes a village. We are gathered here today. We are the village. We see the problems, and we have come together to work to solve them. So tonight, I welcome you in the spirit of Ujima to be the village and make a profound difference in our community. Welcome.
I'd also like to say that I'm glad you are here, and would like to thank Dr. Lanston and the St. James Church for hosting us and for their work in putting this together. I want to say just a brief word about the Interfaith Affordable Housing Initiative, the group of congregations that has been working on this and now has brought you all together tonight, and then we'll turn it over to the city representatives who will share with us some information that will be helpful to us. We have been a group of 11 congregations has been together working since January. Many churches started before that, but working on since January to see how we together could try to make a difference in affordable housing. We started with just trying to get our mission clear, and so I want to share that with you all. We are a network of local congregations working together to maximize affordable housing for Greensboro residents. So that's our short mission. We are all guided by shared faith principles that call us to love our neighbor, and we bring congregations together to learn. We've been doing a lot of learning over the last 9 months, and there's so much to learn in this area. To collaborate, we really want to work together as congregations and advocate. We know there's also a role for advocacy in this, for safe, affordable housing, with an initial focus on families with children who are experiencing homelessness or living in temporary housing. We realized early on how big this area of affordable housing is, and so we felt like this, families with children, would be a place we could come together and start. We're seeking to activate the unique resources of faith congregations, and we know that each congregation, each faith community has some unique resources to bring to this, and we want to focus on kind of what our gifts are as congregations and how we can pull those together. Those may be land. Many of us have land. Some of us have land we're trying to figure out what to do with. It may be buildings. It may be funding. It may be volunteers. It may be other resources. And to partner with other organizations to address affordable housing crisis in Greensboro. So we've got some folks from Habitat here with us today. There may be other organizations as well, and certainly the city is one of those organizations. We want to partner with anybody who can do this work together. We started with 11 churches or congregations, as I said. And I just want to identify so you know we are also very much open to other congregations joining us. I know we've got a few folks from other faith communities here with us as well. We started with St. James Presbyterian, Reverend Lanston. Paula Pierce and Bob Powell have been members of that church, been on our steering committee, and they'll help with some leadership tonight. Holy Trinity Episcopal Church is really the church that first kind of gathered some other churches to join them in their efforts. Reverend Mark Lyle King has been our convener for that group, and we're grateful for him. And Mike Johnson is on the steering committee and one who really helped to start this. West Market Methodist Church has been a part of this from the beginning. Ann Pinto, some of you all know, also works with the Greensboro Housing Coalition, so she brings a lot of expertise to this. And Reverend Jeremy Benton, their mission pastor, has also been joining us. Temple Emmanuel, Rabbi Andy Corin has been helpful, and Terry Flam Goldberg has been on the steering committee. Westminster Presbyterian Church, where I serve, and Jennifer Cross has been on our steering committee. Presbyterian Church of the Cross, Vicki McCain has been a part of this group. Her husband, Frank McCain, has also been on our steering committee. Frank is busy, some of you know, with his new job as the director of the United Way, though I did see him at lunch today, and he apologized for not being here. He's got a United Way meeting, but United Way is very interested in engaging faith communities, and particularly around this issue. First Presbyterian Church, Reverend Jill Duffield, and Grant Duffield, her husband, has been a part of the steering committee. From First Baptist, Reverend Alan Sherrouse and Reverend Buck Cochran. St. Andrew's Episcopal, Reverend Jenny Inman and Virginia Haskett. Trinity, Amy Zion, Reverend Darren Mitchell, and the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina. Many of you know Beth McKee Huger, who has been long working in this field. So that's the group that has come together to do this work. And again, we would welcome you to join us. One piece we have developed that I have copies of if you're interested is a kind of assets inventory for churches, just to begin to think about some of the different things that we bring to this work as congregations, and so would be happy to share that with you. I also want to say a word of thanks to Unica Small and to Shanta Fleming, who from the City Housing and Neighborhood Development Department have worked closely with our group to look for ways to cooperate and are providing the bulk of the program tonight. And they've brought some other folks from the housing as well to really to kind of give us information, to be this learning. We will then have a time for questions after their presentation. We'll ask you, I hope you got an index card as you came in. If you have a question as you're listening, feel free to write that down. You can pass that towards the outside of the pews, towards the windows. And if you're on the outside pew near the window, your job is to hold that up in the air when you get a question. And our ushers and volunteers will pick those up. And then Ann and Paula will help ask some of those questions as we try to learn more. And then Bob will close us with a where do we go next. So that's our kind of plan. And again, grateful for your presence and for being here tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Nico.
Good evening, everyone. It is absolutely a pleasure and an honor to be before you tonight to introduce to you many of the members that work in the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department and let you know what our goals, mission, and motto is, and make you aware of some of the current projects, programs, and initiatives that we have currently in the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department, but certainly to make you aware of some of the tremendously devastating effects of the COVID pandemic, specifically as it relates to affordable and safe housing, and the city's effort to address some of these issues. Next slide. The mission of the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department is to provide supportive programs, projects that establish, enhance, and promote safe, affordable housing and produce positive neighborhood development. Our vision is to enhance neighborhoods, to offer safe housing options, and promote positive results. Our motto is people first. Why people first? Next slide. So people are at the center of everything we do. They're at the center of our projects, which are tremendously focused on increasing or preserving affordable housing, actual tangible units, our programs, which are supportive primarily of our homeless community, and our partnerships. This is where you all come in. We're looking forward to establishing positive partnership, connecting with each and every one of you so that we can address what has become a housing crisis, not just in the city of Greensboro, but throughout the entire United States. Next slide. I'd like for you to become familiar with some of the names from the leadership team within the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department. They are, it goes without saying, our esteemed leader, Michelle Kennedy, is our director. I am one of two assistant directors in the department. The other director is Cindy Blue. Neither of them could be here tonight because we also have city council meeting tonight. Caitlin Bowers, Troy Powell, who is here tonight, and Larry Roberts. Some of you may want to know, where does funding come from for the Housing and Neighborhood Development? Well, not surprisingly, you, tax dollars. We get what's termed NESBOM dollars, which is a tax rate that's imposed on everyone that owns property in the residential areas of Greensboro. We also get a significant amount of funding from the Housing and Urban Development Department. That funding is centered around programs which are led by community block grants, Housing People with AIDS, Emergency Solutions Grant. We also have a LED program, as well as a Home Investment Partnership Funding Program. So last year, we were fortunate enough for the city of Greensboro and its residents to support a new bond funding, whereby we were allowed to get $30 million in bond funding. However, we're only allowed access to $8 million per year. And if you have any questions about our funding and what we do with it, as a matter of fact, last night we had a CAPER public hearing meeting, which is our consolidated annual plan, which talked about a lot of the results that we generate with using some of the funding that's made available. So you can contact me if you have questions about this specific funding, or Charlotte Gaskin, who is our departmental financial analyst. Next slide, please. So many of you have heard housing crisis. You may want to know how we got here. Well, one of the biggest catalysts for the housing crisis was, of course, the global pandemic, COVID-19. There were many problems already inherent within our neighborhoods, but the pandemic shed a higher focus on some of the needs of our communities, and it also shed light on many of the deficits and barriers that many of our residents are not able to have access to. So what else did the pandemic do? It highlighted many economic factors. So if you're like me, when you took economics, you weren't really that interested. So the whole concept, theoretical concept of supply and demand didn't make a whole lot of sense to you. But I bet when you go to the grocery store now, it makes some sense to you, right? Because those prices are certainly indicators of inflation and economics of higher demand and lower supply, because that's how prices are derived. Supply chain issues were also inherent throughout the global pandemic, because being international global economics, we're getting supplies and materials throughout the world. And when you're isolated, shut up, and many people were affected by COVID. So there was no production being done. And so we're still feeling the lingering effects from low production, which affects the supply. Inflation, yeah. So many of you may have gotten stimulus checks. So there was a lot of money put into the economy, which made an influx of money being put into your communities, which made the value of that money actually go down. So inflation, because prices raised. Raw material costs. And please keep in mind that for some of our builders and developers, raw material and labor costs are significant factors in their ability to either produce rental properties or single-family homes. So if you're in the market to buy a house right now, if you ask me, I would say don't do it. Over the last three years ago, the average interest rate was 3.5%. Today, if you check it, it's in excess of 7%. So what does that mean to the average person? That means the house that you could have afforded 3 years ago, you can't afford anymore. Or you cannot get approved for a loan. And so what's happened is what some of you may have considered first-time entry-level homes, which are typically priced between $120,000 and $170,000, where if your interest rate is at a point where you are paying more than 30%, which 30% traditionally has been the threshold for how you determine whether home or shelter is affordable. So with interest rates being higher, we see an influx of people who are now termed as house burden. And basically, from a statistical standpoint, that means they're paying more than 50% of their disposable income just to provide shelter. Think about that. So if you're paying 50% of your disposable income, and money, cash flow is already tight in your household, does that mean you have to sacrifice medicine to pay your rent? Does that mean you have to sacrifice health care to pay your rent? Prescriptions, maintaining a holistic, well-balanced life is tremendously affected by your ability to have safe, affordable housing. Have any of you heard of NIMBY? It's an acronym. It stands for Not in My Backyard. And it happens a lot. It happens when there may be a developer who's thinking about moving in, let's just say, a side of town that may not traditionally be welcoming to low to moderate income individuals. And it manifests itself a lot historically with redlining or zoning laws, which, no offense against zoning laws, they were put in place initially for safety and to provide a standard for households so that you don't have slum households or you don't have neighborhoods deteriorating. But that soon manifests itself to a huge barrier to low to moderate income people, right? And then last but finally not least, my phone just rung about 30 seconds ago, and guess what? It was a person offering to pay cash for my home. How many of you, show of hands, how many of you get these phone calls on a regular basis to buy cash offer? It's appealing, right? It's appealing for you to say, okay, well, I'll sell my home as cash offer, guaranteed closing. But one of the major repercussions of going with that type of deal is that your neighbor, Pastor talked about being on the same team as your neighbor, looking out for your neighbor. So your neighbor is in the market for rental property. That investor doesn't care about them. They don't care about the head of household, the children, the complete family set that may be trying to find affordable rental properties. So, and oftentimes, so here's another thing, they don't live in Greensboro. They're not only disinvested in that family or that tenant, they're not vested in Greensboro, but the offer is tempting. So I'll take this opportunity to encourage those of you all who are getting those phone calls to really consider single families that are in the housing market as well, because they're being shut out of viable opportunities from these investors. So that's how we got to the housing crisis. 3 years ago, the city of Greensboro contracted out a study, which, of course, it was before COVID, where affordable housing was the main focus. I'll turn the mic over to Anna so that she can talk about some of the study that was done and the recommendations, as well as some of the current projects we have going on in the department.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Anna Blanchard, and I'm the multifamily development analyst, so I get the privilege of getting to see new housing being built and managing some of these programs. You can go to the next slide. So the plan that Unica was just talking about is a 10-year housing GSO plan, and it was really consulted with and taken on to see what are the needs in the community right now that we have, how are those needs going to evolve and change over the next 10 years, and then create a plan for the city as well as partners to come alongside and really make an impact and serve our community in the most effective way possible, specifically through housing and community development programs. You can go to the next slide. So this, and I won't read through all of these numbers, but this was some of the recommendation for funding for the housing GSO plan. You can see that there's everything from affordable rental homes all the way down to implementation of planning. We've had a big focus on supportive housing, access to home ownership. If you've heard of our neighborhood reinvestment areas, these are specific areas of the city that have some preferential treatment in terms of some of our home ownership programs, as well as some bonus points for developers who are interested in coming and doing new developments there. So this has really tied in all of these aspects together, allocated funding in an effort to really have a holistic picture of what are the housing needs in Greensboro and how can we address them. Next slide, please. And getting a little bit into our progress on housing GSO, I'll go over some of our current multifamily and single family projects, as well as how it fits into this need. Go to the next slide. This shows the need for affordable rental units. I think everyone can easily agree that there is a need for more affordable rental housing. This is categorized, as Unica said, as someone being able to spend as a household less than 30% of their take-home pay on all of their housing costs. So that's what their rent or their mortgage, as well as any property taxes they might have, as well as any utilities. So all of that together, less than 30% of their take-home pay. And as you can see here, Greensboro has a pretty large shortage of this affordable rental housing. So right now, well, in 2020, it was around 4,000 units, and we are expecting it to increase by 2030 to 11,000 units. So even looking at what we see as a kind of natural increase here, thinking about how not only do we look at the shortage that we have now, but hopefully prevent an even stronger gap in the future. Next slide, please. And here you can see the area median income. This is a chart that we use a lot in our work. It's really what a lot of the federal programs are based off of. And this can show you, if you hear things like, oh, this project's gonna serve 30% AMI or 50% AMI, these are just different affordability levels that relate to what percentage of the area median income a household is at. So for example, you can see here, one person at 30% of AMI would be about 15,000. And I really like this, that it shows both the affordable rent range as well as the purchase price for a 4-person household. Which if you look at, I know I looked at some of these purchase prices and I was like, I haven't seen any quality homes come up for most of these prices. I'm someone who's hoping to buy a home in the future, and even myself, it has been difficult to find things. So I think this is really showing both the gap for renters as well as people who are looking, like Unica said, to get into probably their first home. And a lot of these first homes are really decreasing in availability. And next slide. So this is what makes me excited, and that I get to see that there is some progress of additional units being built. We have over 400 units that are partially funded by the city in construction right now. I pulled up the ones, I know this group is especially interested in housing for people with families. These are all family units that are coming up. We have Townsend Trace with 180 units, Lofts at Elmsley with 84, and Yanceyville with another 84 units. They're all being built right now, so if you drive over to look at them, you will see apartments going up. I love getting to walk around and see the apartments going up and being able to be like, oh, here's this 2-bedroom apartment, and someone's gonna get to live in this. That's really exciting for me. We also, in addition to these, have the rehabilitation of Southwoods apartments. Those are studios that they just started construction, as well as Villas at Elmsley. It was just approved. It is right next to the Lofts at Elmsley crossing, and it's going to be 52 units for seniors that are also all affordable as well. Next slide. And then just a few examples of some of the single-family work that's been done as well, specifically around single-family homes that are affordable for new homeowners. These were some lots that were in a partnership with Community Housing Solutions, as well as using some of our federal home funds that we get each year. And so you'll see here, there are 5 different units. This is an example of one, really targeting those homes that are great for a small family or a first-time home buyer, that are affordable rather than households maybe needing to continue to rent at increasing rental prices. And then one more slide. This is a few images of our tornado recovery. That program is kind of winding down, but we still have a couple of houses still being built there. It was after the tornado in East Greensboro, and really targeted both helping people whose homes were really affected by the tornado and doing some rehabilitation there, as well as homes that couldn't be preserved and replacing them so that people could continue to have single-family housing opportunities. And with that, I will pass it on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shantae Fleming. I am the Community Development Analyst in Housing and Neighborhood Development. Our Let's Safe Program Manager, Melissa Burton, was not able to join us tonight, but she did provide some information concerning the Let's Safe program. So if we could go to that slide, please. Thank you. Housing and Neighborhood Development's Lead Safe Housing Program, which is also called Lead Safe Greensboro, provides grants to assist low-income homeowners with addressing unsafe lead paint conditions that pose a potential health hazard to young children and pregnant women. Lead Safe Greensboro is leading the way in protecting children from the dangers of lead by educating families and providing information on the hazards of lead exposure and healthy home education. The Lead Safe Greensboro program offers free home lead testing to single and multifamily homes that are built before 1978. In 2020, the city was awarded a $2.7 million HUD lead-based paint hazard control and healthy homes grant that is being used to make at least 115 housing units lead safe from the period of January 4th, 2021 through July the 3rd of 2024. In the fiscal year of 2022 and 2023, a total of 30 homes were made lead safe through remediation and repairs. If you are a homeowner, a landlord, or a contractor, and you're interested in receiving more information about the dangers of lead-based paint and how to protect your family or the families you serve, please give us a call at area code 336-373-2383. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Alverson. I'm the supportive housing analyst for Housing and Neighborhood Development. I'm trying not to make eye contact with Ann Pinto because I didn't respond to her email today. So I'm just going to look straight ahead. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I was obviously invited here to speak about homelessness. What I do is I lead the homelessness prevention programs and any of the federal funding or local funding that goes into the community to address homelessness. My understanding is you all have an emphasis on family homelessness, and so I'm going to kind of go off of this slide and kind of go in another direction. Because you may think that these numbers are very low, and they are. The reason for that is because we have limited resources for families who are experiencing homelessness in our community. We have a few shelters that take families in, and then in addition to that, we have a couple of transitional housing programs that accept families. However, as Unica spoke earlier about the economic impacts of COVID-19, what we're seeing is that families and individuals as well are staying longer in those programs because of inflation, housing costs going up, things like that. So we're not seeing the turnover that we would normally see when people exit out into their own permanent housing placement. So these numbers are not the best numbers to go by. In addition to that, what we are seeing in this community as we speak is a huge increase in the number of families experiencing homelessness. Mostly this is anecdotal information, but it's information that we have to collect to begin to track that data better. And what I mean by that is because, you know, on a weekly basis, I'll get at least 5 or 6 emails about a newly homeless family who needs a place to stay. And the only reactive thing that we can do at this point is to place them into hotels. So much so that we're having to provide a hotel assistance that we're limiting it to certain families at this point based on their need and their crisis. In addition to that, in terms of the anecdotal feedback that we're getting, we're seeing a huge influx of people moving to the area. And that's for a number of reasons. One being that we are considered a hub for services, so a lot of the more rural counties are going to want to move here to receive those services and access those services. There's also the implication that there's more housing resources here as well, and that's just not the case. Secondly, you know, we need to begin, and this isn't my attempt at fear-mongering in any way, but one of the things that we need to take into consideration is all of the new economic development that's happening in our region. With all the new jobs that are coming here in the next 2 or 3+ years, it's going to bring more people. So when folks get the idea that there's going to be more jobs, even if they're not qualified for them, they're going to come here and seek that employment, which is just going to further lead to low-income families or families experiencing homelessness. If you'll go back to that slide. Oh, okay. So I just wanted to kind of give you an update on that. I can answer direct questions, obviously, if you have those, but we are facing a huge crisis as it relates to family homelessness here in the city of Greensboro and surrounding area. So some of the things that we invest in are, we have to approach homelessness from a holistic approach, meaning that we really have to look at the family and their barriers and each individual person that's in that family and what their barriers are. And that can be difficult, and it's complex and it's complicated. But some of the things that the city invests in, and we're trying to move away from emergency shelter services or just emergency services in general to really solely focus on the housing piece of that. We have a great relationship with the county, and we really want to see that dynamic between those two entities being county with services and then City of Greensboro with housing. But currently we invest in things like day shelters, emergency shelters. You probably all have heard about Regency Inn. That is a hotel we used for 2 years for temporary winter emergency shelter. It served individuals with significant disabilities. That's offline because we're converting it to permanent supportive housing, which is key in our community. We have a couple of transitional housing programs that we continue to fund, and rapid rehousing, if you hear that in the community, that is a huge national best practice that we'll continue to invest in. It's the most direct way that we can get a family off the street. And we use the housing first approach, meaning we don't look at sobriety, employment, income, none of those things. We're going to get you placed first, and then those things will come next. Other things that we support is the housing hotline operated by the Greensboro Housing Coalition. Support services, as I mentioned before, PSH, I mentioned hotel assistance. I want to go back up to safe parking. I mentioned the anecdotal feedback that we're getting from the community in regards to families. And Safe Parking is a brand new program. It's still in its pilot year. It's the first of its kind here in the state of North Carolina. And it's designed to provide a safe place for people living in their cars while they're experiencing homelessness. And the reason for that is because, one, we're seeing a lot of new families who are homeless that don't know how to navigate the system. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And they need a place where they can feel safe. And so instead of parking at the Walmart parking lot over at Wendover Avenue and being told to leave, or having police come up, or having other people come up to harass them, this place, this partnership that we have with the Interactive Resource Center allows for them to stay overnight at their property. There's 24/7 security there. We offer showers, bathrooms, things like that, along with that with case management services. So that's a newer, innovative approach for us to get a better grip and handle on family homelessness. We see a lot of families. And then additionally, rent utility assistance. Unica mentioned one of our funding sources that we don't talk a lot about, and it's a kind of a, it shouldn't be hidden, we're trying to get it more out there, but it's housing opportunities for individuals or persons with AIDS. We have been identified as a community that has quite a large population of individuals who are living and thriving with HIV and AIDS, and they need those housing opportunities. And so we'll continue to provide that through tenant-based rental assistance, permanent housing placements, things like that. I think that's it for my slides, but I just wanted to end on this note, and many of you have probably heard this, especially if you work in the school system or work closely with it. Last year, so homelessness is defined differently for children, so it's a bit broader range, but it gives you more insight into what our children in our community are experiencing. Just over 2,000 kids last year, in the last school year, identified as experiencing homelessness, 2,000. And so that gives you an idea of, despite how broad that definition is, we have children living in places that are not habitable, they're couch surfing, they just don't have a consistent place to call home. And so really that's a true indicator and data point that we can use to really support and uplift the need for more affordable housing for families.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carla Harrison, and I'm with Code Compliance. Code Compliance is a little bit different from my colleague. They're working in the office, and we're the one going out in the field. Usually, we focus on the existing housing stock to make sure that it's habitable, it's safe, and also to increase person's morale, that you feel happy that you're living in your home. Code compliance, what we do, we are concentrated in the city of Greensboro, and we work according to the council districts. So we have 5 council districts. I'm one of the supervisor, concentrated in District 1. And then we have another group concentrated in District 2, and a group in District 3, 4, and 5. What we focus on is housing, make it habitable. Also non-residential. Just in the last 2-3 years, we've been looking at commercial spaces as well, but our focus is on housing, making sure that your yard is well maintained, your grass is not over 12 inches, no trash in the yard, making sure just to eliminate blight, just to keep the existing housing stock, habitable. So when my colleague here is looking for additional housing and to add to this affordability, it goes well with what we're doing in trying to maintain what is existing. We also look at abandoned vehicle and junk vehicles. Abandoned vehicles are usually parked on the streets or on properties that are with no permission. For example, persons parking in commercial spaces without permission of the owners. They would usually, and we're a complaint-driven division. So if you have an issue, you will call us. Our number is on the screen here. Larry Roberts is our manager. So if you should have an issue, you could call 336, preferably 373-2111. That's the office number. And they would normally enter these concerns that you have or complaints. We do get involved in community engagements. Most of it is monthly community meeting, and recently we have a coffee and code, and what that is in the morning hours, and we don't find many people having time in the morning, but we do have a more relaxed community event where you could come out and talk with us and just relax one-on-one. We're not presenting, it's just more interaction. And we also have a lending tool program. I did brought some handout with me. It's in, it's not a flyer, it's, what is it again? It's a magnet, sorry. So I brought some, it's in the back there, you could get some. What we do is try to maintain the air, because when we are asking you to clean up your property, most person cannot afford to clean up. And if we clean it up for you, it's going to be very costly. So we have this new program where we have tools like power wash, lawnmower, clippers, everything just to keep your property, to upkeep it. And let's see what else we do here. And that's about it. And if you have any question, we have Larry Roberts' number, which is 336-373-2538. But if you do have a complaint, it's best to call the office, which is 373-2111. Thank you.
All right, so my name is Troy Powell. I'm the Neighborhood Impact Manager for the department. Next slide. So this is a newer area in our department, and as you can see, the screen is full, and there's a lot of things that that we focus on in trying to create affordable housing, creating safe, affordable housing, and there's also things that we have to do once properties that are under enforcement leaves code compliance. Once an ordinance is adopted, then it comes to me for demolition or some sort of remediation with a receivership program to repair it and get it back in use with their supply of housing. So we have the remediation of unsafe and dangerous buildings. You don't want to leave the structure up. You don't want to leave it too long. It just stays forever. When you leave a bad structure up, it hurts the neighborhood. One house looks bad. It's what they call the broken window theory. you leave one broken window busted, another one's going to bust, the next property's going to start deteriorating because nobody wants to live beside that one, and pretty soon you realize everybody on the entire street has left because nobody wants to live there. And that is exactly what happens when properties remain unrepaired or nuisances or just in a deteriorated state. So we have the immediate response for unsafe non-residential buildings, rehabilitation and demolition of buildings. We've had a lot of properties that's been on a backlog, but the City Council this past April of last year appropriated funds to address the 91 structures that was slated for demolition. So I've moved through all of them and we ended up remediating and getting a lot of them repaired. A lot of them we needed to look at them again, but the city had to demolish at least 21 of those structures. And demolishing a structure is not necessarily a bad thing. You do get the lot prepared. It's prepped for a new structure to go on it. It's ready for the next person or the next builder. And the structures that we are demolishing, just know that the floors are falling, the roof's falling in. It is dangerous. These are dangerous structures that we're making these decisions that we're having to demolish. So you also have the receivership program, which is its management of creating housing. This is newer. It's newest in North Carolina. The state legislature adopted a law called the Receivership Bill in 2018. What they were trying to do was give cities the authority to allow private persons to have certain powers of a municipality. And in doing so, they made the law quite complicated. So no other municipality in the state has tackled it. We tackled it in 2019, gave a presentation to City Council, and City Council approved the pilot initiative. The program was slated to address 20 properties, and we had selected those properties through our algorithms. And today, we have not yet handled those 20 properties because we've handled 42. So getting 42 properties repaired without going to court, that's the last part in the receivership program. The receivership program is the whole part of it is that the court issues a court order appointing a receiver to make the repairs to the property and place the liens against the property. That's the power that the city already had, is to repair the structure and to place a lien against the property to collect it, same as a tax. The only thing the city did not have was the court order authority. That's the reason state legislature created this new law. So far, like I said, I send out the letters, I send the statute, and I send a departmental policy on how they can get a 6-month extension. But what they don't want to do, the key thing in the receivership statute, is you will lose control of your property for the rehab period that it takes to fix the structure and a 2-year period that follows that. And if you own a home and you're in a buyer's market or a seller's market, you do not want to lose control during that time of your property. You don't lose ownership. Your property is never taken. You just lose temporary control because the judge is going to let the receiver fix the property, and then at the end they'll settle things up and the property is still owned by you during the entire time. So the receivership program for the city, like I said, is very valuable. I've put 42 properties through. All 42 have been repaired. They're off the list. So now I'm working through the 15 to 20 properties, and we may have 3 or 4 that I think right now are in line that might actually go to court, but I believe they're going to go to court because there's no one here to take care of the property. There's no heirs remaining, so I think it's going to have to go to the court, but that's really the only path of fixing the structure. Managing affordability, housing affordability. You don't have municipal land bank management. We did look at that, and one of the things that we found from our advisors is that the Community Land Trust is best suited for our community. So we are in phase 2 of the Greensboro Community Land Trust. Phase 1 was a lot of engagement with the community in the targeted areas, which is our reinvestment areas and redevelopment areas. So we had 7 community meetings, 2 Zoom meetings, and during phase 2 is going to be the development of a business plan. So we're going to get more feedback, and once we get that from the citizens that are going to be helping us with that feedback, there will be more community engagement. A community land trust, as you heard earlier from my colleagues share about the rental market, if you're renting and you're already paying way too much, 50% or more of your income, you're already struggling, right? Well, if you can't hang on to that rent, but if the average sale of a single-family home in Greensboro is $250,000, you probably can't afford that either. So you're stuck. So what's the only remedy? Homeless, move in with family, move out of the area. It seems to be that is it. The land trust is going to give you an option. That is the middle option. That's the bailout that's going to help you. What the community land trust does, it allows a property to go into a trust in which the trust owns the land, but you can be sold by the nonprofit group everything that's built upon that land. And you can purchase it at a much lower price. And the much lower price is not in a traditional market, but it's a lower price that is an affordability market under the HUD standards. So I'm not going to go into a community land trust class with you. That's just a snippet of it, but you can go online. We've got all this information online. If you go to the city's website, www.greensboro-nc.gov/CLT for Community Land Trust. There are Zoom recordings that we have on there of 2 hour-and-a-half presentations that was done by our consultant that has helped to create Community Land Trust all throughout the U.S. If you hadn't got to see it, certainly take some time for that. And I'd be glad to talk more about the land trust. As the community engagement, I'm assigned as the resident liaison to all neighborhood groups and associations. Special projects that are assigned by the department. There are certain properties that'll come to me to see whether or not can we use a property that's been acquired by the city or came through the city on foreclosure. And this is kind of some current activity that's happening now. Can I build tiny homes on the property? How best can I use this home in order to create housing? If a single family home is $250,000, can I put 3 small homes on a regular sized property in Greensboro for less than $250,000? If I can, then I've solved a problem. And that kind of makes that part a little more efficient for us. And then the last thing y'all probably seen on the news before last year, and also upcoming, is the Pallet Shelter Community Program. You've probably heard it as the Doorway Project. So this is small housing that helps to shelter persons experiencing homelessness during the wintertime. Last year we got it up in December, and it has to come down by the end of March 31st. So this year we will be reinstalling it, redeploying it back up November 1st, and it will again go to March 31st. That we have more information about that on our website as well under the Doorway Project. Thank you for your time, and certainly feel free to write down any questions.
Next slide. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news yet again, but this messaging, the facts need to get out in an effort to be a catalyst for cooperation and for change and for productive partnership. The current poverty rate has jumped from 7.8% to, as last tracked in 2022, to 12.4%. Again, what does that mean? That means that some people are homeless. Some people are what they call couch surfing, from one relative's home to the next, with families. That doesn't build security. That doesn't show safety. Our young people need to feel safe and secure to perform at school. They shouldn't be worried about where they're going to sleep at night. Medical costs, whether it be for physical or mental health. How many of you know that the percentage of antidepressants that are being prescribed and currently used since COVID has tripled? So there's a need. People have anxiety, depression, a multitude of issues as a result of the pandemic. Healthy food options, obesity, and adverse health effects are apparent. And if you're in poverty, do you think you can really make the healthiest of eating options? You're probably going for convenience, which is high calorie, high fat, because it's easily accessible. Undersourced schools. And so if my son were here, he's 28, I'm a PTA mom. From the time he was in 4th grade, which is pre-K, to the time, all the way through high school. I'm that PTA mom, and actually his junior year, he said, "Mom, please, enough already." But not only out of a love for my son, but out of a love for all the students that were at the high school. That's why I showed up. To his dismay, I was on the PTA all the way through his senior year. So poverty counts. What I would encourage you to do is don't just look at the numbers. When you see the statistics, find the people behind the numbers and how their day-to-day life is being affected. There is hope. Recently, next slide, please. Specifically with regard to trying to build a supply of households in the city of Greensboro. The planning department recently indicated that they annexed a number of acres in the county where homes are going to be, a significant amount of homes are going to be built so that the inventory can increase. And our hope is that some of it will be affordable. Next slide. So I'll end with the City of Greensboro current mission statement. Greensboro will be a community with endless economic opportunities and exceptional quality of life. I'll give you the Unica translation. The Unica translation is, "I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly." I'm sure some of you share that translation. I want to let you know that the Housing and Neighborhood Development is vested in providing safe, affordable housing and reinvesting in our community. I'd like to invite each and every one of you to be a part of that initiative. And I think we've gotten off to a great start. It's been a pleasure working with Pastor Thomas and the entire Interfaith Affordable Housing Initiative. We look forward to connecting, communicating, and collaborating what I'm sure for you seems like an insurmountable hurdle. but I know we can do it. With willing spirits, all of you can bring your resources, your intellect, your volunteerism, and your humanitarianism to the table to be used to make significant change as we address this housing crisis in the city of Greensboro.
So we do want to thank you all both for presenting this information to help us get a scope of it, and also just for the work that you do and the number of people you help. We want to do two things now. One is we do want to take a few minutes for questions. So if you have written down a question, if you would pass that to either aisle, we'll give you a minute to write a question down. You may want to just stretch your legs where you are. We'll spend a few minutes on questions, and I see some of those coming in, so if we could collect those. And then we really, most important, want to think about, having heard this and coming together, what do we do next? And kind of where are we as people of faith being called to come together and try to make a difference? So we'll start with questions, and then we'll move to where we go next. And Ann and Paula will lead our question section, and Bob Powell will finish us up. So let's take a moment to stretch. I know we've been here about an hour, and we'll try not to be too much longer, but we do want to take a few minutes to answer questions and come back. So if we just take a minute, turn your questions in, and then we'll think about where we go next.
One other thing we'd like to do, we didn't ask, this QR code has a survey for volunteers to participate. Okay. And so we'd like to put that up.
Okay.
And I'm gonna have the guy, so you can do it with your phone, and we also have hard copies.
Okay, perfect. You will see up on the screen there's a QR code.
I'll do it right before you speak, okay?
I am bread made
let me go ahead and begin to pull us back together, if we could, so we can have a chance to ask some questions and then begin to think about where we go next. I'm glad to see people making some connections, because that is a part of what we're trying to do here.
No, you have the gap.
We do have a couple of copies of the annual report, and so what I'll do is kind of make those available. If anybody wants to take a look, we can also then leave them at the back. And I think you need also, well, we lost our QR code.
So in an effort to stay connected, we have devised a survey, and if you would, please take out your phone. Very basic information, your name, address, email address, so that we can stay in contact, because we're on this journey together. We also, for those of you who aren't technically inclined, we also have hard copies. So with a show of hand, if you'd like a hard copy of a volunteer form, we'd be happy to provide that as well.
All right, while they're passing out the surveys, we're going to start to try to get to some of the questions. We're going to apologize up front if we don't get to all of your questions, but we'll try to do our best to cover as many. We tried quickly to combine some of the questions to get to them. One thing we do have is a question about, can we get a copy of the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you are registered for tonight, Pastor Thompson is going to get the slideshow out to you.
So first question is around the voucher program. Are you able to tell us a little bit about the program, and then any data you have? How many families with vouchers are waiting for affordable housing? And how long are they normally on the wait list to get affordable housing here in Greensboro?
So the Section 8, which commonly known as a Section 8 voucher, is handled through the Greensboro Housing Authority, and we don't have access to their data. I can say this, having worked at the Housing Authority approximately 3 years ago, that there's always a wait list. There's always a need, and it's always for the people already living in poverty, what is commonly known as the working poor. So I can guarantee you, although I'm no longer employed at the Greensboro Housing Authority and happily employed for the city of Greensboro, those numbers probably are startling, because I was no longer employed at the Housing Authority before COVID. I actually started at the city during COVID, and the numbers were already at a deficit. So I can answer that question that way, is that there's an extreme need, but we don't have access to that data because that's through the Greensboro Housing Authority.
The next question we got, are there any requirements for developers to include a percentage of affordable housing in new developments? And if not, could there be?
There's currently not a requirement for what's termed mixed-use development. For those of you who are engaged in advocacy and lobbying, I would say that would be a great initiative for those at the state level to advocate for such a requirement, and even at the local government level, because that is not currently a requirement. It's highly encouraged, but not a requirement.
Okay, the next question we have, has the city considered implementing rent control or the expansion of the homestead property exclusion to keep families in affordable housing as communities are gentrified and property values continue to rise?
So North Carolina is what's called a Dillon state or jurisdiction, which means all the laws come from the state legislature. So they will not authorize rent controls right now. And again, if you are civically engaged and enjoy advocacy and lobbying, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your representative and let them know your concerns.
A family with children making 20 to 30% of AMI is priced out of affordable permanent housing. They need significant assistance. What assistance for affordable permanent housing is the city providing?
I'm going to defer that question to Liz, who's our supportive housing person. Or Anna. Okay. Because it's kind of twofold.
I'll get started because Liz and I are kind of work on different sides of the same issue. She sees a lot of people who come and are kind of in that crisis mode of not having affordable housing. And a lot of my job is helping developers and ushering in more affordable housing. So thinking about a family who's at the 20 to 30% AMI, one of the major things we're doing is the city has put some pretty large investments into some of the multifamily housing that I showed you, as well as some single family homes. So that is probably the biggest thing we're doing in terms of actually providing housing, is providing financing for those apartments that are then affordable to people at that income level.
Thank you. The next part of that question was, is the city setting aside apartments?
Yes, so that's, and that's one of the requirements, and one of the things that's really highly encouraged is to have those lower levels of affordability that's, at the 30% AMI level and below. And so that's something that the city, and as we're looking at proposals for new developments, that we really like to see as many of those units as possible.
Just to add in terms of what's currently available, I mentioned earlier what's called rapid rehousing. Again, it's a housing program that several of our agencies implement and have available funding for. So I'd strongly encourage, if you know a family that is 30% of area median income or below, that's really the income bracket that we're targeting with that program. And it can provide up to 24 months of rental and utility assistance. And then once they exit the program, an additional 6 months of case management is provided to make sure that transition is smooth for that family once they get on their feet. We do have rent and utility assistance, very few and far between at this point now that we're out of COVID.
What relationships do you have with private and corporate landlords, and what do you hope to gain from those relationships?
Currently, that is certainly an opportunity to partner. We don't currently have a relationship with private landlords, except for if they're in trouble, and then they end up at code compliance. But being more proactive certainly is an opportunity the department has identified to establish, maybe partner and do some mixed use affordable housing, but at current time, that's not up and running. But we have identified it as an opportunity.
There's a question, multiple questions. I've been trying to figure out how to tie it all together, so I'm going to ask it in two parts here. One of the questions deals with incentives, and what are the incentive programs for developers to build affordable housing? And then the second part of it is there used to be a federal program that used tax credits to induce developers to build affordable housing. Has there been any efforts by the city to take advantage of this?
So that is called Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which is administered by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. And that's actually the gateway to receive what's called GAP funding for local developers to come and solicit funding for affordable housing through the city's funding sources. So yes, LIHTC is up and running. I'm not sure how familiar. There's only a certain amount of credits given out to every state, which is 4% and 9%, and it's not enough. it's not enough being done, and it's not enough credits. And to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of our developers are finding it extremely hard to make the numbers work. Because they have payroll to make, they have cost involved, they're not volunteering. And so to make the numbers make sense at the end of the day is very, very difficult right now.
Okay, you mentioned about the housing bonds and the fact that there is an 8.5 million part of it. Could you explain that a little bit more about the bonds and the 8.5, and then what is the city plans for using the monies that you get from the housing bonds? Do you have plans?
We do have plans, and actually the money's already been allocated to projects and programs. So the total bond that was authorized and approved by the voters was $30 million. Traditionally, that probably sounds like a lot, but not with inflation. And on top of that, we only receive $8 million in funding per year. So that $30 million will have been allocated and spent in 3.5 years. So we'll be back to ask the voters yet again for additional funding to support affordable housing via bond allocation. So of the $8 million that we have already gained access to, $5 million went to support small developers so that they would have access to loans. It's a partnership that the city embarked on with the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro. So $5 million of that $8 million is already gone. We also use some of that funding to support our pallet homes and the establishment for that during the winter months for those that are unsheltered.
Often, those who need affordable housing have limited access to transportation. Are there plans for public transportation to be offered in the expanded area for housing?
Certainly underneath the entire city's umbrella, our current city managers has issued an initiative that we can better cooperate and collaborate as we address holistic issues for our residents. And the transportation department right now is currently, and they were seeking comments. I'm not sure if the comment period is still open, but they have a consultant come in that is looking for input that hopefully will lead to better decision-making with regard to our transportation department and the needs of our community.
Question around the community land trust. Could a church with land in Greensboro work with the surrounding community to form a community land trust? And if so, is there possible financing from the city that could help build affordable housing?
So that's an excellent question. Troy, do you want to take it? A community land trust could be started, operated, and governed by anyone. What we like to do is invite, if there is a potential partner that's present tonight, to come and be involved with our current initiative so that there is better co-op. So what we found is that in the city of Greensboro, we're very passionate, we're very committed, we're some of the best humanitarians in the world. But when we segregate and don't work together, it leads to ineffective and inefficient operations. So we want those that are interested in being a part of the Community Land Trust to come and let's make this work together without separating. That's what we'd like to see happen. But yeah, by all means, they could.
Are there coordinated support services for families with children experiencing homelessness and in temporary housing in Greensboro? If so, who are the support providers working together?
So Guilford County has what's called a continuum of care, or COC for short. And so it's made up of, I think they did a presentation last week, over 60 partners here in Guilford County that provide support services and access to housing. That is our network of providers that help to support families experiencing homelessness, and then to also connect them to the right services that family needs in particular. If you encounter a family that's experiencing homelessness, the first thing you need to do is make sure they call our coordinated entry line, and that's the by name list that we create and put people on. And so it's a full list of everyone experiencing homelessness in Guilford County. And then we work through that list in terms of prioritization to get them into the correct housing program for them. I think that answers the question.
Okay, I think I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
So let me also add my thanks to the folks in the city to bring all this information to us. But my part of the program really is to ask questions of us, of the group here. As you heard Ernie say, ultimately the question is, where do we go from here? But I'd like to preface that a little bit and maybe set a little bit of foundation to ask some questions of the group. First of all, let me just walk up and down and check with folks. Give me some data points that you just heard. Just anybody as I walk up. What data points? Poverty rate. Yes, great. $3 million bond fund. 2,000 children homeless. What other data points? 4,000 that need shelter and only 400 that are underway. Yes. What other data points? What did you hear? Yes. The need for antidepressants has tripled, and the costs are rising. So with this, what, if anything, did you hear that encouraged you tonight? What kinds of information did you get from the city that said, this is something that maybe we need to jump on? Again, anybody. The land trust idea, good. What else? What other opportunities are there? For anybody to become part of any part of the solutions. Yes. And I'm sorry, one here? The Doorway Project. Okay. What other opportunities did you hear about? What brought you joy, if anything? Working together. Working together. Advocacy opportunities. Receivership did 42 instead of the 20 that they set out to do. Yeah. The other side of the coin. What frustrated you? What did you hear that made you anxious? The shortage. The increasing needs, yes. The difficulty with construction projects coming online, and if I can add to that, the costs that contractors are dealing with, and all just the regular market problems of construction. NIMBY, frustrating, yes. Yes, ma'am. The 30% markup on homes. Mm-hmm. Tension between local and state policy. the number of children that are homeless, that surprised me. It really did. Family living in cars. So, what did you learn tonight? What more do we? They've given us lots of information, lots of information has come out. But what wisdom do you feel like we have more tonight than when we came in? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. City is aware and working on it. And I think you had something also? No, you just catching her. Yeah. Yeah, what do we know? The city needs our help. Yeah. Pastor, it takes a village. Hey, everybody's going to have to lift a shovel. So, what are we going to do? What ideas do we have about how we're going to lift a shovel and help the city? So the need for affordable housing units. What else? I'm sorry, go ahead. We haven't heard from you yet. So the asset tool, and frankly, that gets to my next question, which is how do we do this? Right? And so for us, the asset tool is an important step for us as we enter into this stuff. So what do we need to do and how do we need to do it? Where's our passion? Where's your passion? What do you want to do? Yes. Yes? Okay, so Mills, did you get all that? Yes, ideally available land, and then if that connects to the specific projects. Okay. Yeah. Identify the resources in our communities. Thank you. Yeah, and willing to contribute. Yeah. Find out about connectivity to public transportation. Yes. Right, right. To welcome it. Yeah. Telling stories, and unique here, I think that relates to everything she said about it's the people and understanding the person, not just the numbers. Yes. Yes. Been a while.
Normally when we speak of affordable housing, there's an image that's common in all of our recesses. There's an image. I'm the first vice president of Greensboro in the city to serve that capacity for 4 months. If I was to tell you
So given that, what are some solutions? What are some solutions? We need solutions. Well, so one step is to have the real conversations. What other steps? Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I missed your first name. Dave. I think you made an excellent point. I think another great thing is to invite our local politicians up and ask questions, because everyone gets so excited about the national elections. Well, it's our local politicians that really
Excellent, excellent,
what, where, and how we do it.
excellent.
And we have to, if they're not doing what we believe we need to thrive in our community, then we need to find other people that we want to do that.
And they are not black and white.
But we can do that. But we can, what can we do? Right. Yeah, ma'am.
We need to advocate and hold a rally at the State House and let them know that anybody that builds in Guilford County, anywhere in North Carolina, because Winston Salem does it, if they are going to build, they have to have affordable housing units in each building that they build.
So a piece of it is advocacy around, and because the issues are connected. Right, that's right, yeah. What else? What are we doing? Yeah. What are we doing in our own churches?
And then I think we should look at that whole resources and assess what we have as resources and come together and determine, are we going to work together? Are we going to come together? If the church has land and that's available for building affordable housing, can we start the actionable step of collaborating around that church to get some housing built, and then go to the next church, which has land? And I think we need to start in a collaborative way, working together to see what we can. I'm just trying to think of actionable items.
Yes.
Look at doing as we do the talking. I'm not discouraging the talking, but what can we do as taking action? And I think that's important that we do this assessment, asset inventory, and then let the initiative come together and see if we can get churches working together. I think collaborating, we'll get much further on as opposed to each individual church trying to do something.
So look at how we can work together. Yeah. Ma'am.
Also, I think we need to have an educational component, because there's still a lot of people that say, we don't have a problem, we don't have a poverty rate, we don't have homeless people, but I don't see them. So, can you take an canned educational program on the
So tonight is the beginning of an educational program, but there needs to be much more. Yes. Great ideas, yes.
I think we need to educate the community and ourselves that families that are in affordable housing are our neighbors. They're part of our community. In fact, they are an integral part of our community. Afford folks that can afford affordable housing teach our kids, help support our healthcare system.
Gotcha. So, kind of winding up here, what's the first thing we need to do? What's our very first next step? Getting down to action items, as Paula has said. What are our immediate action items? See? Got it? Gotcha. So what's that first step to education? What's our immediate task? Design a program for what we need to do. Gotcha. Okay, and so how do we do that? Have more gatherings like this, okay? Whoops, there's another one. Take it to our congregations. Yeah. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Episcopalian, and we have a committee called the Bishops Committee on Affordable Housing, and we already have the education to take to any church that wants it.
Okay, so again, this is part of the interfaith.
Yeah. That's the lady you see over there.
Okay, and that's the whole point of the interfaith council that everybody's bringing in, putting in the pot.
There's going to be, don't have the location and time yet, but there is going to be the Greensboro Housing Summit on October the 26th that will be a good educational.
Yes.
I encourage us all to attend. We have it on the flyer.
And we have flyers on that. Yes.
So that would be a good point of education for us to attend that because we'll be able to interact with service providers for housing at that.
And then the other one, the Temple Emmanuel, is having an action where they're gathering. Help me, Paul, or anybody from the. Say, help us. Yeah.
They're gathering $25
Gift cards.
gift cards to places like Food Line, which will be given to families that have been identified through the school system as homeless.
And so I guess I'm hoping that the Interfaith Initiative can help us all contribute to that. Yeah. Yeah.
So what we like to see is what we see, more of what we see here tonight. Willing spirits, open minds, and a cooperative attitude. I hope that many of you were able to do the Q code and offer up your availabilities for volunteer opportunities. A lot of people think that throw money at an issue. But we need people. We need relationship. We need people to partner, let's just say, with people that are unsheltered, so that they know that their lives matter, that we care. So it's not just about what assets you bring to the table. And honestly, from my own personal experience, I think your heart is your biggest asset that you can bring to the table. So as we start this journey together, let's seek solutions. Let's be transparent and honest in an effort to make good decisions, excellent decisions. This is a high-performing group, so I already know. The choices that come out of this meeting today along the journey are going to be awesome. And so that's what we want. So next steps, we'll convene, we'll work with Pastor Thomas. And I love the idea of the gift cards. And just as an aside, a personal note, this is my neighborhood. I'm from Old Ashboro, and I have absolutely enjoyed conversing with you all and starting this dialogue. I played in the park. It used to be nothing down here, so we played kickball at the end of the street. People don't play kickball anymore, but I played kickball. So it's been awesome. Just now I have another memory that I can put into my own data bank this evening, this event that I've shared with you.
So at this point, let me ask my two pastors, Ernie and Vanna, to take us out.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Okay. First, I want to say, of course, thank you for the work you all do every day. Thank you for the way you see people and also work to make their lives better. And the same for all of us. We've heard a lot tonight. And I imagine that we're going to go home and think about the things that we have heard. And I would hope also pray, because the Spirit will lead our hearts together, but also towards how we want to make a sustainable change in the lives of everyone who's made in the image of God. And that is our goal tonight. And so as we leave from this place, let us go out in prayer. Let us pray. Holy and merciful God, we are thankful for how you have gathered our hearts and our minds together to do the work of justice. It's often messy, it's definitely hard, but God, we thank you that you order our steps and you direct our paths. So tonight, as we have heard many things and as our heart burns for the statistics that we hear, may it also break for the things that break your heart. And may that humbleness of spirit lead us together, not apart, but together to do transformative work in this world according to your call and according to your will. God, we can't do it without you, but with you, we know that all things are possible. So from this day forward, we move forward, God, by your Spirit, by your call, to take forth some risky business for your kingdom transformation, and so that lives are made better, and this world can truly be a reflection of what you desire it to be. We thank you in advance for the movement of your Spirit in our hearts and in this world. It is in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Go forth in peace.
Nothing stays the same.
Police departments.
Everyone will change.